Night hides most cars. It turns chrome into gray, flattens boxy silhouettes, and leaves only the glow of taillights fading into the dark. But some shapes don't disappear. They crouch under the street lamps like big cats, all muscle and tension, waiting for the moment someone is foolish enough to turn the key. This is the story of the Lamborghini Miura, the car that slid onto the stage in the mid-1960s and quietly rewrote the rules for how a fast car could look, where its engine should sit, and who it was really built to scare. A mid-engine V12, born from the after-hours work of young engineers who ignored their boss's no racing policy, wrapped in Marcello Gandini's bodywork that looked more movie prop than road car. Tonight, in the Car Story Vault, we open the file marked Miura. We'll follow it from a bare chassis that shocked the 1965 Turin Motor Show to a finished car, stealing the spotlight at Geneva in 1966, then out onto mountain passes, movie screens, and auction catalogs, where its legend only grew louder. So settle in. Imagine a low gold coupe parked outside a closed nightclub, engine ticking itself cold, the smell of hot oil and fuel hanging in the rain. Somewhere behind the seats, 12 cylinders wait, sideways, impatient, and the night is about to learn a new word: supercar. The Miura story doesn't begin with a design brief. It begins with boredom. By the early 1960s, Ferruccio Lamborghini is a successful industrialist, a man who made his fortune building tractors and industrial equipment. He buys Ferraris, finds them fast but fragile, and decides he can build something better: grand touring cars that are quick, comfortable, and above all reliable. His early road cars, the 350 GT and 400 GT, are front-engine V12 GTs, smooth and sophisticated, deliberately not racing cars. Ferruccio makes it clear, Lamborghini will stay out of motorsport. Racing, in his view, is expensive, irrational, and bad for business. But down on the engineering floor, three young men think differently. Gianpaolo Dallara, Paolo Stanzani, and test driver Bob Wallace are obsessed with racing technology. In their spare time, evenings and weekends, they start sketching something Ferruccio has not asked for: a lightweight chassis with the V12 mounted behind the seats, driving the rear wheels, inspired by mid-engine race cars. They give it a name from the world of Spanish fighting bulls: P400, posterior, 4-liter engine at the rear. On paper, it looks like trouble. On the road, if it ever gets there, it might look like the future. In October 1965, at the Turin Motor Show, Lamborghini does something strange. On its stand sits a low welded steel chassis with no body, no roof, no paint, just a skeleton on wheels. The engine, a transverse 3.9-liter V12, is mounted sideways behind the seats, sharing its casing with the gearbox and differential in a compact block. It looks more like a racing prototype than something you'd park outside a restaurant. Ferruccio hasn't yet decided if this thing will ever be built as a road car. For him, it's partly a technical showcase, proof that Lamborghini can engineer something wild, even if it never leaves the show floor. But the reaction from the press and rival manufacturers is immediate and intense. One visitor in particular takes notice: Nuccio Bertone, head of the Bertone design house. According to one retelling, Ferruccio jokes that Bertone is the last coach builder to arrive at the show. Bertone walks around the chassis, studies the mid-engined layout, and supposedly says he will design the perfect shoe for this wonderful foot. Back in Turin, he hands the project to a young designer in his studio, Marcello Gandini. Gandini now has the job of drawing a body that matches the drama of that bare metal skeleton. And maybe, just maybe, changes the way all fast cars will look from now on. Gandini doesn't design the Miura as a traditional front-engine GT. He draws it as if the entire car were one continuous movement from nose to tail. The result is shockingly low, around 150 millimeters tall, barely coming up to many people's beltline. The front is short and sharp, with pop-up headlamps and eyelash-like black surrounds that make the car look both elegant and slightly predatory. The windscreen is steeply raked, flowing into a roofline that curves down over the engine bay like the back of a big cat. Behind the seats, louvers cover the transverse V12, hinting at heat and noise trapped under the skin. The rear haunches swell over wide Pirelli tires, and the tail cuts off cleanly with round lamps set into a black mesh panel. It is not just beautiful. It looks fast standing still, as if it has been caught mid-pounce. The interior continues the theater. Low-slung seats, a high central tunnel, toggle switches, twin-pod instruments angled toward the driver, and a gated shifter ready for someone brave enough to use all 5 gears. When the finished Miura appears at the 1966 Geneva Motor Show, painted a luminous orange, it doesn't just attract attention, it steals the show. Ferruccio, who once told his team to forget about racing fantasies, now has a car on his stand that makes Ferrari's front-engine GTs look like they're from a different decade. The first production Miura, known as the P400, goes on sale in 1966. Under that impossibly low body sits a 3,929 cubic centimeters V12, breathing through 4 triple-choke Weber carburetors. On paper, it makes around 350 horsepower at 7,000 revolutions per minute and about 367 newton-meters of torque at around 5,000 revolutions per minute. In practice, it means a top speed quoted at roughly 280 kilometers per hour and 0-100 kilometers per hour in the mid-6-second range, making the Miura one of, if not the, fastest production cars in the world at the time. The chassis is a steel monocoque with front and rear sections that tilt open like clamshells, exposing suspension, luggage space, and that transversely mounted powertrain. Suspension is fully independent with double wishbones, coil springs, and anti-roll bars. Brakes are discs all round. But engineering art comes with quirks. The shared engine gearbox oiling system can lead to contamination, and early cars suffer from cooling issues and high-speed front-end lift that keeps test driver Bob Wallace very busy and occasionally nervous. None of that matters to the people who see it parked outside casinos and nightclubs. In an era when most fast cars still have long noses and engines ahead of the driver, the Miura looks like something escaped from a prototype paddock and accidentally given license plates. Lamborghini doesn't stop at the first attempt. In 1968, the Miura P400 S arrives. S for Spinto, meaning tuned. Visually, it's subtle. Different badging, some trim changes, electric windows, more chrome. Mechanically, power rises to around 370 horsepower, helped by improved carburation and revised cam timing, while the interior gains better sound insulation and more luxurious materials. In 1971 comes the final, and for many ultimate, evolution, the Miura SV, Sprint Veloce. The SV drops the delicate eyelashes around the headlamps and gains wider rear arches to cover fatter tires, giving it a more muscular stance. Under the rear deck, the V12 now produces around 385 horsepower, and crucially, the transmission and differential use separate lubrication, a major technical improvement over earlier cars. Suspension and tires are reworked to reduce the nervousness at high speed and improve stability. By the time Miura production ends in the early 1970s, total numbers are modest, roughly 475 P400s, 140 P400 S, and about 150 SVs, plus a handful of special variants. Not many, considering how loud an echo the name Miura would leave in automotive history. On paper, the Miura is impressive. On the road, it's something else entirely. You don't sit in a Miura so much as you put it on. The seat is low, the windscreen ahead is shallow, and the view is dominated by the twin arches of the front wings and the road rushing between them. Turn the key and the V12 doesn't just start, it clears its throat. There's a mechanical rustle from behind your shoulders, then a rising metallic howl as revs climb and the Weber carburetors open up. The gear shift can be heavy and bulky when cold. Steering is unassisted and weighty at parking speeds, and visibility over the shoulder is more suggestion than certainty. Driven fast, on a good road, the car is a contradiction. Light on its feet, thanks to its mid-engine layout and low weight, yet always reminding you that most of its mass sits behind you, waiting to push if you ask for too much in a corner. Early cars can feel nervous at very high speed, The SV calms some of that, but no Miura is ever truly relaxing at 250 kilometers per hour. And yet that's the point. The Miura isn't a calm GT like Lamborghini's earlier 400 GT. It's a theater piece, a car that demands full attention, full commitment, and maybe a little bit of madness from anyone who tries to use all the numbers in the brochure. If the Miura had only existed from 1966 to the early 1970s, it would still be important. But the decades after production turned it into something else. A myth. Popular culture did its part. A bright orange Miura, sliding through the Alps in the opening of the Italian Job, burned the shape into the minds of millions. Even if that particular car meets an abrupt end, the combination of color, sound, and scenery framed the Miura less as a machine and more as a cinematic event. As time passed, the car's place in history solidified. Writers and historians began to call it the world's first supercar, the template for mid-engined exotics that Ferrari, Maserati, and others would follow. It became a symbol of late 60s excess, glamour, and danger, parked outside casinos and villas, often with as much drama inside the cabin as under the engine cover. On the market, values climbed. Rare SVs and well-restored early cars started appearing at major auctions, their hammer prices pushing well into seven figures. Special, one-off cars and well-documented examples, especially those with celebrity ownership, sit even higher, in the realm where the word value starts to feel theoretical. Today, the Miura is both museum piece and living artifact. Some live in glass-walled collections, barely driven. Others still fire up at dawn for mountain passes, reminding everyone why this car matters. So what do we do with the Lamborghini Miura now? Is it just a pretty ancestor in the family tree of supercars? A museum-grade curiosity from the late 1960s? Stand near one as it cools after a hard drive, and it doesn't feel like history. It feels alive, metal ticking, fans whirring to a stop, the smell of hot oil and fuel hanging in the air behind your shoulders. Look at it from the side, and you realize how early this vision arrived. A mid-engined V12 in a body this low and this dramatic, at a time when most people still thought fast meant a long hood and a trunk. Maybe that's why the Miura still matters. It wasn't designed by a committee to fill a market segment. It was drawn by a young designer around the dreams of three engineers who wanted to build something their boss had never asked for. Ferruccio Lamborghini didn't want a racing car. He got something more dangerous, a car that made the whole world of fast cars change course. As the lights go out in the vault, and the last echo of that transverse V12 fades, the file on the Miura closes for tonight. But somewhere, in a quiet garage or under bright auction lights, a lime green or orange Lamborghini sits waiting, its engine poised one twist of a key away from waking up the future all over again. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing to the Car Story Vault for more slow cinematic journeys through automotive history.